Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up on the west coast. My catchphrase now on the channel apparently when it comes to Swedish beer. And for this review we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review a good number of things from before. And this is a style that I've had a bit of a hankering for recently. I'm going through a little bit of a lager phase here on the channel of course, and this is one that I'm very curious about. So for this review then, we are going to return to OO Brewing once again. And we're going to have a look at the Pacific Pils, which comes in at 4.6% ABV. So this is the third Pilsner style beer that I've had from these guys. The first one was the Pivot Pils, which I reviewed maybe 18 months or so ago. Then recently I reviewed the Ectopils, which is actually one of their older beers, but one that I had just never got around to reviewing. Also Peter, the Master of Hoppet's favourite Pilsner beer apparently. And now we have this one, which I believe is only the third Pilsner that they've done actually. I say only, but yeah, for three different Pilsners to come out of a craft beer brewery these days is pretty damn good actually. And I have to say, OO Brewing are always quite, pretty damn good actually when it comes to trying the more traditional styles of beer. So really curious to see how this one turns out. This beer was released here in Sweden on the 11th of August 2020 as part of the Tillfälligt assortment. So yeah, I got this one at Hansa Systembolaget in Malmö. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. But yeah, 4.6% ABV Pilsner this one. Quite snazzy artwork as you always usually get from OO Brewing, and I'm very curious to see how it turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. Really been enjoying a number of good kind of Pilsners and Helles and Dunkels and things like that recently, and long may it continue. I do think the lagers are very underrated as a style generally, so yeah, curious to see what OO have in store for us with this one. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from OO Brewing before. You will see another 2 beers reviewed from these guys this month a little bit later. And of course beyond that you will definitely be seeing more. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about OO Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So OO Brewing, as I've told you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg here in Sweden, up on the west coast, and the company was founded back in 2011 by Olaf and Ole Andersson, who are childhood friends. Not related to each other though, but for many years these guys were also avid home brewers, and they've always been very interested in beers obviously, and Ole was apparently heavily involved in the Gothenburg beer scene since pre-drinking age, which I believe in Sweden is 18, but you can't buy things from Systembolaget until you're 20, if I remember rightly. But Ole Andersson, of course, was the original head brewer at Stigbergets Brewery, where he developed, the GBG Beer Week and the Amazing Haze, which are two of the kind of signature beers from Stigbergets. He also developed the Narangi, which is probably the best known beer from OO Brewing there, and this was where the OO beers were originally produced. So while Ole is taking care of the brewing side of things, Olaf manages the business side of the brewery, but he also works in Copenhagen at a marketing agency from what I understand. And apparently, they just started out making beers that they wanted to drink themselves. In April of 2017 though, Ole left Stigbergets Brewery and fully invested his time with OO, and the company invested in their own brewery facility in the Hisingen area near the Tingsted Bridge, and this brewery was equipped with a 2,000 litre brewing system, which means they can brew theoretically up to 500,000 litres of beer per year. In the first year they produced around 100,000 litres of beer, and then they're basically going through an expansion plan at the moment, adding more tanks gradually to reach capacity over the next few years. As of August 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around, I think it was 65 different kinds of beer. I believe the exact number that's listed there on Untappd is 63 as of the 18th of August 2020. So yeah, these guys are releasing you know, at least one new beer every month through the Lokal Småskaligt assortiment in Systembolaget, so you can always get something new from OO Brewing. These guys have been doing some really, really nice things recently. I mean, probably the best beer that I've had from them in recent times has been the Charismatico. That's a beautiful New England. Was that a double or a triple IPA? It was a big beast of a beer anyway. And probably my favourite beers from the older things that they used to do, I always loved Muscles. Muscles was a really nice one, and so was Evergreen. Those were more kind of West Coasty type IPAs. I'd love to see them kind of resurrect those beers at some point, but the really interesting thing that I like from these guys is the 50/50 series, where you can learn about different hop blends. They always release one of these every month. Sometimes they release the 100 series as well. You will see one of those reviewed, one from each of those reviewed a little bit later in the month. I think, yeah, I've got a 100, I want to say, I can't remember what hops it is actually. I think one of them's Idaho 7 and one of them is like Chinook and something else if I remember correctly. But yeah, you will see a 50/50 beer reviewed later in the month, and also one from the 100 series as well, but they will release things like this every so often too. This one, as I say, part of the Tillfällig assortiment, but a number of the OO beers come out as part of the Lokal Småskaligt as well. So yeah, definitely check out the Narangi. That's one of the classic Swedish craft beers in my opinion, and if you do come across the Muscles or Evergreen, those are very nice old school West Coast IPAs. But these guys, very, very capable with different styles, including porters and you know, pilsners and things like this as well. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about OO Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork there. There you can see it looks like one of these kind of blurred out TV images there, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure if there is any kind of artistic meaning to that. You know, to be honest, when it comes to art, I'm artistically illiterate. I love you know, the heavy metal album covers and things like this, but when it comes to stuff like this, the more kind of modern art, I'm just like, okay, does it look cool? You know, but yeah, interesting one. I'm not sure what the idea behind the artwork of this one is, but you know, I guess it suits the whole thing here. But it says the artwork on this one is Lundgren and Lindqvist 2020. So I'm pretty sure that they do artwork for a number of different Gothenburg breweries, if I remember rightly. But like I said to you, this one is a 4.6% Pilsner beer. There you can see the label on the back, which you'll always get from OO Brewing. OO, of course, stands for Olaf and Ole, the original founders. But yeah, 4.6% Pilsner beer, this one. I actually couldn't find out why they called this Pacific Pils. The only thing I can think of is that it would use some New Zealand hops or something like this. It wasn't. They didn't say anything about it on Facebook. There wasn't anything about it on Untappd, and you know, I couldn't find anything on the website about it either. So I'm guessing this might be a Pilsner with some kind of Southern Hemisphere hops from Australia or from New Zealand or something like that. So yeah, as I've told you before, I'm a huge fan of the New Zealand hops. You know, Riwaka, Rakau, and Nelson Sauvin. Australia's got some lovely hops these days as well. You know, with the likes of, you know, you always had Ella, you had Victoria's Secret, Galaxy, Enigma is the kind of newer one that's coming out there. But yeah, when you open up this beer, you get a lovely kind of juicy fruitiness coming off it right away. The New Zealand hops always had that kind of more oily fruitiness to them, and you can kind of smell that straight away with this one. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some New Zealand hops in this one. Quite expensive to get over here in Europe, from what I gather. But yeah, this one looks very, very nice. So as you can see, this one has poured a rich, kind of very rich, kind of bright golden yellow colour. It's got a head probably just under one finger. It's kind of a creamy coloured head rather than being perfect white. I'm not sure if this beer, no, this one is definitely a kind of hazy Pilsner. Look at that. So I thought the glass was maybe sweating a little bit there, because the can, of course, is sweating thanks to the lovely summer that we're having here in Scandinavia. But yeah, you can see if I put my fingers behind the glass, this one is quite clearly hazy. There's quite a lot of carbonation visible in this one, which you're often going to get with a Pilsner beer. But yeah, this one does look pretty nice. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance, and I can tell you the bit of aroma that you get out of it when you open up the can is really, really very nice. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, let's take a look at the nose. Yeah, it's Yeah, it's definitely a very... It really, in the aroma, it really smells like an ale, to be honest with you, rather than a lager. And of course, for those of you who don't know, the main difference between a lager and an ale is the type of fermentation that it undergoes. You get top fermenting and bottom fermenting. Usually lager beers are fermented at really cold temperatures. You know, I think, if I remember rightly, it's usually about 4 degrees, whereas, you know, ales are fermented a little bit higher, about 10 or so, if I'm remembering them rightly. I always forget which one is top fermented and which one is bottom fermented. I think the lager beers are the bottom fermented ones, and the ales are top fermented. But yeah, usually it's to do with the temperature of fermentation. And yeah, the Pilsner style of beer, of course, originates from Pilsen in the Czech Republic. At the time that it was developed, though, it was developed by a German brewmaster, and of course Bohemia at that time is now part of the Czech Republic. It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. 1840, 1860, sometime around then, the first Pilsner beer was created. But yeah, this one, to me, it's interesting, this. It almost, if I was blind smelling this, I would wonder if it was some sort of golden ale, I have to admit, rather than a Pilsner, because it's got a lovely kind of smooth, bready base to it, actually, and it's got a lovely big kind of fruity juiciness, so probably blind smelling this one, I would mistake it for a golden ale, but I think that's probably understandable if you smell this beer yourself. It really, the fruitiness, the big oily fruitiness that this beer has, and the breadiness really give you the impression more of an ale than a kind of nice, kind of crisp Pilsner. But yeah, curious about this, definitely. Pilsners, some of them can be a little bit more oily, and of course the Helles lager can be a bit more oily as well. So yeah. So yeah, basically the aroma of this beer then, it's got a lovely, very kind of smooth, white bready base to it. It doesn't come across quite as crisp or, you know, slightly astringent as you can sometimes get from Pilsner beers, and this is quite a contrast with the Ectopils that I've had before, which was a very dry Pilsner from what I remember. The Pivot Pils was a little bit more kind of biscuity, if I remember rightly too. This one's definitely more kind of bready and smooth and ale-like in a lot of ways. So yeah, kind of smooth white bready note out of this one. You can get a little bit of the Pilsner malt coming out of this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's carapils in this, because you do get a little bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this one, that sort of oily McVitie's digestive biscuit. There is a wee bit of a grainy note in there, but yeah, it has a very smooth kind of white bread crusty type quality to it, just kind of lingering underneath. But yeah, lovely, kind of smooth, white bready quality to this one. I really like how it goes together. So yeah, this one, yeah, the malt base is definitely a little bit more ale-like in my opinion, but nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think that's everything you really need to say about the malt base. White bread, a little bit of thickness to the white bread in fairness, wee bit of a kind of, there's a teeny bit of a sweet caramel there, a little bit of a more McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and you can smell a little bit of that kind of Pilsnery malt coming out of this one as well. I like how this beer goes together in terms of the malty side of things. Let's look at the hoppy side of it then and see how we go. So yeah, the hoppy side on this one is pretty nice. There's a teeny bit of earthiness to it, but not a lot. It's got a nice kind of floral aromaticity to it, but it comes across as quite like a wet floral aromaticity, if that makes sense. It's got a lovely kind of wetness to it. You've got some nice kind of lighter grassy notes coming out of the beer as well, which I really quite like. It's really, I think it's more of a wet floral note. The green side of the hops in this beer really lean towards that kind of wet, kind of floral side of things actually, which I think is very, very nice. In terms of the fruity side of the beer, like I said, this one comes across as really quite juicy and slightly oily in terms of its fruity characters. I will say straight away, I'm probably not going to be able to name the New Zealand hops or Australian hops that have been used in this one, but the fruity side of things, it is quite tropical. It really is quite tropical. One of the things that surprised me when I was researching the New Zealand hops again recently is that they are quite low in alpha acids. You know, a lot of them tend to be around the kind of 7-8% alpha acid, but you do get the Nelson Sauvin, of course, which is a big 16% beast, and there are a few I think that are above 10, but a lot of the New Zealand hops, they're packed full of flavour, but they are fairly low in alpha acids. I mean, if I remember rightly, Rakau, Kohatu, you know, Motueka, Maltere, Malteke, You know, there's quite a few different hops. They've all got Maori names, of course, but quite a lot of them are low alpha acid. And I'm pretty sure, just going by the aroma of this one, I think it's more likely to be New Zealand hops that are in this than Australian ones. So it's got a lovely note of it's got a little bit of a kind of mango-y, apricot-y sort of thing going on. There's maybe a wee tiny touch of pineapple. It's very much that kind of not too pungent tropical fruit kind of thing that you get out of this one. It's got I'd say a sort of apricot, I'd say mainly an apricot-y kind of pineapple-y note going out of this one. There's a bit of a kind of grassy, floral sort of citrusy note to the beer as well, maybe a little bit of gooseberry, something like that. Yeah, definitely a little bit of a gooseberry note to this one. Wee bit of that lemony citrusy kind of note as well. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in this one. Quite a soft tropical fruit note to it, but definitely a bit of a citrusy edge actually. But yeah, for me the green side of the hops is a lovely kind of wet, definitely a lovely kind of wet, wet kind of floral type thing coming off of this. So I think this is going to be a really interesting beer. Take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of that, because like I say, you're not going to come across kind of New Zealand hops all that often. I'm pretty sure this is New Zealand hop rather than Australian. There could be something a bit lower in alpha acid from Australia, like Ella. Victoria's Secret I think is about 11%. So I think, you know, there could be some of the lower alpha acid Australian hops in here, but I'm pretty sure this is New Zealand hopped actually, just from the way the juiciness of the fruits in this one. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. This one is the Pacific Pils, coming in at 4.6% ABV. I'm guessing a New Zealand hopped Pilsner beer from OO Brewing in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål. Oh yeah, this one, it is like a big kind of oily, yeah, it is quite an oily Pilsner, this one. It's definitely more just a kind of, it's almost like a kind of double dry, not double dry hop, but it's almost got a bit of that kind of just more hoppy feeling to it, this one, definitely. This is definitely a bit more bitter than your standard kind of German Pilsner, Czech Pilsen type beer. It's like a kind of craft brewed Pilsner, this one. I like it. Thumbs up to OO Brewing once again. If you like the kind of dryness that you'll get, for example, from the Ecta Pils, you will enjoy this one. You can definitely get a bit of that kind of dry edge that you'll get from the OO Brewing Pilsners as well. Definitely some of that coming out of this beer. So yeah, let's get the rest of it in there. This one should be quite nice. So yeah, this one I think this is like a slightly more hoppy version of Ecta Pils, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they've used the Ecta Pils base. I think this one actually, I think Ecta Pils is like 4.6%, somewhere around that. So yeah, could well be the same base beer with a few different hops and things in it, or very close to the same base beer. But yeah, I like this. So yeah, let's break down the flavour of this one then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel a lovely bit of that kind of, I think there is a bit of pale malt in this one. You can feel that pale malty quality, that blankets the middle of your palate there. Very quickly though, you almost get a line going right up the middle of your palate, and that's the very dry, very kind of crisp malt coming out of this one. It does feel quite different from the sort of German standard Pils malt, if you like. It feels a lot drier, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're maybe using some of the Scandinavian malts like Viking malt and things like that actually. So that's, I do wonder if the malts that they've used in this are Viking Pilsner malts, because they are very distinctive. You will find that the OO Pilsners do have a very distinct dry quality to them, so I do like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, you get a line going straight down the middle of your palate, very, very dry, and just on the sides of it, it's almost like a trench actually. You've got that very dry line, and then you've got the slightly breadier notes from this beer pushing their way up. If you go towards the back third of your tongue, the beer is distinctly more kind of thicker and white and bready and things like that, which is nice. So yeah, it is definitely a little bit more kind of thick and white bready and things like that, which is good. The more and more that you drink of this one, you do get a little bit of a biscuity note. You get a very sweet kind of caramelly note in the very centre of your palate there, but it's very, very small. But then as you move further out from that, you get a bit more of a kind of biscuity, digestive, grainy sort of thing. But really the thing that prevails into the aftertaste with this beer is that very dry Pilsner malty quality coming out of this one. But yeah, that's I think all we can really say about the malt base. This one, it really is again another very dry Pilsner from OO Brewing, very crisp actually. In terms of the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate there's a definite little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, the earthiness does spread forward just a little bit. You get a nice kind of slightly spicy floral aromaticity from this one on the front corners of the palate, then around the very front curve of the tongue. That floral spiciness does follow it around a wee bit, but you do get just a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy quality to the beer as well, which is quite nice. And of course the front third of the palate there, that's where you get the nice, juicy, fruity sort of things. So yeah, let's have a little look at this. So yeah, where to start with the fruity side of things? This one, it does have a wee bit, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, it does have a little bit of that darker kind of grapefruit and things to it. I mean, I know there is a New Zealand variety of Cascade, which I remember being a bit darker and more grapefruity if you like, but a lot of the other New Zealand hops are kind of more passion fruity and things like this. So yeah, this, if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a bit of that more kind of pungent grapefruity, passion fruity sort of thing. But as you come further forward, gradually it gets a little bit lighter and it's more mango-like, it's more it's a bit just lighter and more tropical, I would say. Yeah, it starts, I don't know if mango is the right word, but yeah, it does gradually get a little bit more kind of, oh, how would you say it? It does get a little bit more like apricot. I think apricot is definitely a fair way to kind of describe this one. You get a few kind of, on the very kind of, just behind the very front tip of the tongue, you get a little bit of a more gooseberry-ish type quality out of this one. Could there be a bit of Nelson Sauvin in this? Could it be? Because it does have that gooseberry kind of note. It could, you know, you can, gooseberry and white green grapes are not a million miles away from each other, and Nelson Sauvin might explain the kind of spiciness that this beer has. This is quite a bitter Pilsner in that way as well. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of Nelson Sauvin in this. 16% alpha acid, of course. It's a big beast of a thing. Well, you wouldn't associate it with that. You do associate it with those softer fruity flavours. But it's, you know, all about where you add them in the boil right enough, though. Earlier on, more bitterness, later on, more kind of flavour and aroma. But yeah, the fruitiness coming out of this is really quite nice. In terms of the kind of, you know, we need to look at the mouthfeel of this one now. I think it's definitely fair to say kind of gooseberry-ish, but around the very front edge of the tongue you do have a little bit of kind of lemony, citrusy zest to this one as well. So yeah, I like how that goes together. Darker tropical fruits at the back of that front third of your tongue, gradually becomes a little bit more softer and apricotty, then you get a bit of a gooseberry white. I'd say more gooseberry than white and green grapes, to be honest. And on the very edge of the tongue there's a bit of a sort of lemon limey kind of thing in there as well. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, I would say, you know, it is quite a light-bodied beer, but at the same time for the Pilsner style, I think this one is one of the heavier-bodied Pilsners you're going to come across. The mouthfeel leans towards the oily side of things. There is a degree of crispness to this one. It is still quite a dry Pilsner, particularly in the middle of the palate. There is an element of that crispness there. In terms of the hoppy bitterness, I think this one is about 40 IBUs. I do think this one comes across as maybe 40, potentially even 50 IBUs at a push. The carbonation, like I said, is fairly active. I think that gives the impression of a little bit more bitterness. Some nice, juicy, fruity qualities to the beer, like I said. A little bit darker and more pungent fruit as well, but then you've also got quite a smooth malt base, but at the same time quite dry and grainy the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, this is a really, really interesting Pilsner beer, this one. It does feel a little bit like does feel almost like a New Zealand hopped version of the Ectopils, to be quite honest with you. It does feel that that's what this beer in reality actually is, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is just a, you know, New Zealand hopped version of Pacific of the Ecta Pils actually. So yeah, if you like Ecta Pils and you want something a little bit more hoppy and bold, I think you will quite enjoy this one. But yeah, this is another nice lager here to review for you on the channel, so I hope you guys enjoyed my take on this one as well. Let's leave it at that for this beer then. So yeah, this one, it was the Pacific Pils, coming in at 4.6% ABV from OO Brewing in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. A very, very capable brewery, mainly known for their IPAs, but they are very capable with things like porters and pilsners, as I said to you before. But this was a really nice one to review. It came out as part of the Tillfällig assortment on the 11th of August 2020, so get a hold of it while you can. I'm not sure if this will be a one-off release or if they'll do it again. The beers do seem, they do seem to re-release beers after a couple of years and things like that at OO Brewing, so you never know. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from OO Brewing. We will return to these guys later in the month, and beyond that we will do more reviews from these guys too. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out OO Brewing, have a go at the Pacific Pils if you get the chance, but do check out the Ecta Pils and the Pivot Pils too. You can find the Pivot Pils in a lot of supermarkets these days because there is a folklore version, a 3.5% version that you can buy in there too, which is worth checking out. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Slange, skål, make sure you check out OO Brewing from Gothenburg. This one was the Pacific Pils, 4.6% ABV. Cheers.